What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the same. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Phil LeBlanc of Fun Day. You can check him out at funday.agency. And Phil, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. You guys do beautiful storytelling. You have beautiful design. One of the episodes I did was with the co-founder of Pixar. And he talked about some of the original days, starting Pixar. He talked about George Lucas, Steve Jobs, incredible stories around that. And he was before his time, so he had to wait for the technology to catch up to even create Toy Story. So check that episode out. Also, because this is part of the Top Agency series, I did an episode or two with Jason Swank. Jason built up his agency to over 8 figures and sold it. And now they've been buying up agencies and growing that way, which is interesting. And he has a group where he helps agency owners grow as well. And we talked about valuation and the whole landscape there. That was great. Also, Todd Taskey. Todd Taskey has the Second Bite podcast. He pairs private equity with agencies and finds that sometimes when the agencies sell to private equity, they make more on the second bite than they do on the first. So it's interesting, again, the landscape of valuations and business development and growth and M&A. And we're gonna have some conversations probably around bootstrapping versus raising money that ties into this because Phil has a lot of knowledge on that. Before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. And we do strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. You know, Phil, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background to make it look easy for the host and the company to create great content and create great relationships. So for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. And I'm excited to introduce Phil LeBlanc. He co-founded and serves as co-CEO of Fun Day Agency. And Fun Day Agency, wow, Phil, you've had amazing growth. They've grown to more than 60 employees. They have high-profile clients. Some I can't even mention, Sarah Belli, Arla Foods, 7-Eleven, and many more. And before this, he actually ran Flixel Photos for over 10 years. They raised $8 million in funding and achieved top download spot on the Mac App Store. And he's also innovated in advertising by pioneering the cinemagraph. You'll have to tell people what that is. But Phil, thanks for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me.
You know, Fun Day Agency, which we'll talk about, it goes back to you told your story in a video from Flixel, and talk about what happened with that.
Well, so I'm a big believer in the power of storytelling. I think it's I think Steve Jobs said that the most powerful person in the room is the storyteller. He always talked about, it's funny you mentioned Pixar earlier on, because that book is full about, it's everything around storytelling, and I love their book. And Steve Jobs himself was talking about, Disney almost had the monopoly on storytelling, and he didn't like that. He wanted to kind of take that back. And, I mention it because another book that I read, which was quite interesting, was the power of story. And it was all around whoever tells the best story wins. And it always stuck with me that as humans, we share experiences through story, and it's really important to connect on an emotional level. Don't just tell a story that has facts, but bring the highs, the lows, make them feel, make your audience feel. And, that's why we love watching movies, right? That's why that's how our society kind of, in a big way, imparts knowledge and how we kind of do things as a society. And in the world of advertising, we do a lot of that, right? That's the power of storytelling. We just do it in kind of micro content and 30-second ads and all the rest. So I say that because I want to bring the audience to understand that was kind of the mindset. And when we were running Flixel around year 6, because I did this for 10 years, we were running out of money, which was a constant, in the startup world. And we can talk a little bit more about that. But, product businesses, we just need to look at the world of Fortune 5, the stock market right now. Tons of companies aren't profitable. It's really hard to be profitable when you are a product business. And so you need to raise capital. And I always tell other founders, like, when you are raising to VCs, they're at the end of the day, they will still buy emotionally and then rationalize what they bought, just like we all do in everything else we buy. It's no different. Now, you have to still have the metrics and all the rest. And so what we did, and if you go in the company section of where you're going, and you scroll down, you will see that story that we're talking about. Continue scrolling down. It's the Flixel startup story. So we said,
so if you're listening, there is a video, and we're looking at Flixel.com and the company page, and we're looking at the video, and there's Tyra Banks.
And so the idea was, we have this amazing product that does cinemagraphs. It's very visual. Let's do a story around the making of our company so that investors sees all the challenges we went through over the years and how we're trying to build a new visual storytelling medium. And so we knew we had a lot of great B-rolls over the years. And then, so what we did is, for a week, we sat down, we wrote this, the storyline, we filmed it, edited it, and then we put it out. It's like a 5-minute type 5-minute video. And the results were incredible. In a few weeks, we actually raised over $1 million. One investor in particular, we never even talked to them directly. They just watched the video and they wrote us a $500,000 check. They were in Australia. And so just to show the power of storytelling, because everything was conveyed in it, the resiliency, the mission of the company, where we're going, what we faced in the past, the opportunity, but we did it in an emotional way. We didn't just, use facts and stats and all the rest. We conveyed the story. And then, of course, you send a deck which has more of the facts. But this is something I tell startup founders as a mentor of Techstars and Founder Institute, is always lean into your story, because most founders, they have an incredible story of why they're doing their business, and they don't communicate it. And that's a lost opportunity. And so one thing we love, at Funday is working with CEOs, and because they get to tell their story to us, and we get to convey this into their products and infuse that. Of course, we don't always take their, origin story, so to speak, but we get to understand the personality, the DNA of the founders, and what are they trying to ultimately accomplish with their products or services. And it is a superpower that folks need to lean in more in. It's something that you need to develop. I believe, I'm a big believer in it. It's not something that you're necessarily born with, but we're all kind of storytellers, so to speak, and we need to tell our specific story. So probably lingered on a little bit too long on that, but that was the kind of
where does Tyra Banks fit into the picture with this?
Well, you'll have to watch the video, but the idea, the story, what happened, just kind of in a nutshell, is we started this software called the company's Flixel, and it's called Cinemagraph Pro. And there's another video behind that story too, now that you bring it up. So what happened is, we launched a few weeks after our competitor, We were behind. It was a hot, it was a race, and we were behind. We were running out of money. This was early on, but we did a video as one of the launching pads. We did a few different videos, so the storytelling kind of runs throughout the history. And Tyra Banks had seen the video, and she loved it. And she saw that this was an opportunity to use cinemagraphs for her show, America's Next Top Model. And so she saw the video. We were running out of money. We were close to shutting down. She calls us, and she effectively says, I want to integrate this with our show. I want to be an investor. And then we managed to get a bunch of other investors along with that. And it was throughout the cycle 20 of America's Next Top Model. It's all cinemagraph shoots. So using our technology. So that really kind of brought us into another level, as you can imagine. And that led to more partnerships and more opportunity, meaning Panasonic and other the photography landscape, and then brands. And then actually that launched Flixel Studios, which was us doing production work using the cinematograph as a lead-in for campaigns. And so that was kind of the birth of two parts of our business, which was one, doing production work, cinemagraph campaigns, and then the other, selling the software for everyone to be accessible to use.
What's some of the, again, there's a lot of ups and downs in a startup, right? And you mentioned being on the brink of, collapses maybe too much, but like running out of money. And then you get this customer who then also is an investor as well. What were some of the challenges and tough times that you now bring to Funday with your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about resiliency. It's something that I think has been talked about a lot in the world of business. It's absolutely critical to have resiliency, and you have to have belief in what you're doing and why you're doing it. It goes back to your story. It goes back to why are you, what's making you want to bring this into the world. Because in the hard times, and you will always have hard times, not all the time, but you will have hard times. It doesn't matter how successful you are in any business. If you know your reason of why you started this, it's a lot easier, if you still believe in it, to be resilient. And so you need that resiliency. In addition to that, I think you need to surround yourself with the right people. I think that is also critical, because it's a lot less lonely when you have the right people around you. It's still going to be lonely as a founder. But when you do have co-founders and that share your vision, and that's super important. I've never started a company alone, always with co-founders. I'm always amazed to the founders that can do it solo, because it's a lonely journey. And I think it's easier to be resilient and to pull yourself together. Now, that being said, it's also easy to get into infighting as well. So you also have to, hence you got to pick your co-founders, right? And you need to make sure you're aligned, and people do change too. So that's another kind of variable in the mix. So there's a lot to unpack, I guess, on
how did you meet your
subject.
Co-founders? Because I know you work with them at Flixel, and then I think you work with on Funday as well.
Yeah. So
you must have liked them enough, Phil, to continue.
Yeah. So there's one co-founder. So this is really the third venture with this co-founder. So we had a startup called Our Balance, which was a health and wellness that was done, long time ago. And then that was like corporate wellness. And then a second startup, Flixel. And then the third one, Funday. And he's the only co-founder out of all the three that's been consistent. So we've been, over 15 years doing companies together, or almost 20 years now. And at this time around, we decided to be co-CEO, because we're so aligned now in terms of, we have different strengths and weaknesses. And we were very fortunate for Funday to find really the other two key co-founders that has made our success of Funday go so rapid and really aligned. And so one of the co-founders, well, both of them actually, we had worked in some capacity before we ventured into this one. So there was, without going into too many details. So I do think, like, if you
What
can
were you
work
looking
together,
for?
work together before you
Yeah.
kind of, yeah.
What were you looking for? You said, obviously
Yes. So,
because of,
yeah. So I think it's important to have different skill sets, different personalities, but a shared vision for what you're trying to accomplish, a mutual respect, very, very important. Communication is going to be ongoing. One of the things that, learning from other startups that is part of my journey is, we hired a coach from day one, kind of a startup coach that was part of our inception. And we meet every week with that coach, and it allowed us to, issues that could fester or take longer, we address it much quicker, so it doesn't become, something where it becomes really difficult to repair later on. You'll still have your challenges. You're still going to have your disagreements and all the rest. That's healthy, and it's actually how I think you get to a better end result. But what you do want is the respect while you're in that disagreement. So you're all trying to find the best solution, not trying to win your argument, but trying to find the best path forward for the end goal, which is for the business to grow and to prosper.
That's really interesting, Phil. So from the beginning, you have a weekly, we won't call it therapy session, but it is, there's probably some therapy in there too.
It certainly is.
Of business and just navigating the personalities. And are there 3 co-founders or 4?
We're 4 partners. We're 4
okay,
partners at Funday. Yeah.
Because I know Mark was the previous one at Flixel. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So it's 4 of you. How do you decide to choose a coach? Like, how do you find a coach?
In this case, there's someone Mark and I had worked with prior. So we brought to the fold. And so the other 2 obviously trusted us. And obviously, if the coach wasn't right, we would have, not continued on over the years with him. But yeah, I mean, that is one thing that you have to gel, and he's a professional at this, and
right.
He's got a business that they do quite well. You can check them out. Blueprint Management. Cool. Shay is his name, and yeah,
Blueprint Management. And then, do you find? I'm sure these sessions have iterated over the years, but what's the format like when you walk in?
It depends on the week. So there's hot topics. There's what's going on in the week that is, start by celebrating the wins. Well, in our case, we start by celebrating what's fun because of Fun Day, and we can talk a little bit more around the name because there's a lot there around culture. So we touch on different things that's going on in the business, some things that are working in the business, some things, like working on or working in. Sometimes it's specific issues related on, something tactical. Other times it's more strategic. So it varies. And because it's weekly, you kind of see what was covered the last time, and sometimes you kind of bring that back and there's continuity. So it's still fairly free flowing, I would say, just in general. But there's a bit of structure within that free flow.
Yeah. I want to talk about culture for a second before we launch into that. Talk about the transition from Flixel to then an idea of starting Funday.
Yeah. So, one of the things for tech startups is, it's a very competitive market, and you have a window, and you either sell your company or you have to keep iterating and innovating and before money runs out effectively, or if you're profitable, normally you know have a lot of different paths. But the reality is most tech companies are not profitable, and I mean we see it in the public markets. The vast majority of tech companies are not profitable. You know, it's quite competitive, and you have to get to scale. And so we had well, I mean Flixel is still going on, but we had a software solution which we've created called Cinemagraph Pro, which for those listening, it's still utilized in the advertising world. It's essentially a new medium, ideal for micro content. Now it's used primarily for billboards, so digital billboards. It's essentially a hybrid between a photo and video. So everything is still, it's a photo, you've probably seen them, and then you could have just a hair in motion while everything else is still. So the movie industry uses it quite a bit. You'll see some of those. And there was a period before 5G, before TikTok, you know, people were familiar enough and confident enough to do video. This was kind of the perfect ad type for mobile devices. And Facebook pushed it a lot because it was low bandwidth, because of the way the cinemagraph crunches the file, because there's only a little bit of motion. It had motion, which attracts your eyes, and it's more catching than photos. You can direct the audience to your kind of brand, whatever you're trying to sell, right? So if you're selling shampoo, then the hair is in motion. And if you're selling something else, it could be, you know, whatever it is that you're trying to sell.
Are these some examples here?
No, this is Funday. So this would be on Flixel. So,
well, I mean, like the images are moving, or is this a video?
No, it would be where everything is still and just a part that's in motion. So, if you go in Flixel, you'll see examples on the.
Got it. Cool.
And so, very popular for a period of time. We had a window. We came close of selling it. We didn't. Now it's primarily used for big, you know, digital billboards, and it's more of a niche versus, you know, all of the SMBs that could use it for their digital ad strategy on Facebook, which was the market we were going after, because we were competing against Adobe Photoshop, that you could do it there, but much more complex. So we were going for the, you know, the prosumer market and the small business owners. And so when that became clear that it wasn't going to get the results that we had all hoped for, I decided to, well, at that point, I stepped down and kind of looking for my next thing to do. And Mark, my co-founder, he had acquired Flixel Studios, so the arm of the business that was the production side. And, you know, we had some conversation, and we said we got to go back and do a new thing. He had Flixel Studios, but then as we discussed it, we said, well, we really want to be everything we learned around building a startup and all of the folks we encountered and everything we learned around marketing. We said, well, we really want to be a strategy, you know, creative agency. And so there was one particular missing piece for that, which was Jared Folkman, which he became a partner as part of the inception of Funday. And so he had, you know, 25 years of experience in the creative agency world. He was, you know, working with the biggest agencies in the world, running the biggest accounts and brands in the world. And so he brought in all his expertise in kind of the big agency experience, but he wanted to do what we wanted to do, which was like boutique vibes, right? Like working not for accountants ultimately, but working for the craft and the joy of creativity, and doing really work that matters and that helps the end client, and building a culture that was really a differentiator. That's where we saw the biggest opportunity, was on the culture side, because, you know, a lot of creative agencies can do great things. There are a lot of similarities, There's great people working at different creative agencies, but ultimately the one you as a client want to work with is someone that, ultimately cares about your business, and that the people working on the account care about your business and will bring their best creativity. And so, as you're seeing right now, Funday is your strategic and creative partner. So we wanted to bring that energy to our clients. And so Jared was, perfect to bring in, and he's our chief creative officer, and he runs really the day-to-day team, the creative, or anything touching the creative. And he's brought in some of the best from, all the years of experience. He's worked with all the greatest talent. And they've come for the culture. And then our fourth partner, Alex Budjian, he came from the AI world, and being part of the founding team for the financial services for AI Watson, and really understood the fintech space really well, AI, Web3, crypto. And so with the four of us, we were able to there was a good mix of talent and ambition and wanting to do things differently. And that was really the birth of Funday.
There's two things I want to unpack there for a second, Phil, which is, you say we brought Jared in, he was the missing piece. Right. But it's not always easy to attract top talent. Like, it sounds like this person, they could probably do whatever they want. I mean, they're working with big brands. Like, how did you attract Jared into the company?
Yeah. Well, without going into too many details, one of the things we, as entrepreneurs, that you do is you try to de-risk people as much as possible. You try to make it attractive. You really want to set the tone. So, we did secure certain clients that were going to be able to kick things off. That always helps. There was some hustle that came before that we were able to leverage. But ultimately he was also helping, there was many other things that he helped us along. So there was,
you had a relationship.
It was a relationship that was,
you had a working relationship
for over, many years. Yeah. So there was, you don't just,
you drop these like seeds along the way. Like, exactly. Maybe you should work with us, or
you can't just attract, without either building a long-term relationship over the years or having something substantial to bring to the table. For them. So yeah, you have to look at your, what are you offering, and make it attractive. And I mean, one of the things for him that attracted him primarily was, he could run his own ship. In the sense that, he had learned all these things. And there's a lot of times, and this is a frustration we see in the advertising agency. And this is actually, one of the things that is problematic in the creative agency world is people work very, very long hours, very little respect, and it's a grind, and ultimately goes to, bean counters, so to speak, at the top, because most of the big agencies are owned by holding companies, and they just care about the bottom line, not the work. That's not their primary thing. It's like, oh, if the work gets you the money, that's fine, but it's the bottom line. So a lot of decision making is made based on that, and so you don't get the chance to nurture the same way your team. You don't get to reinvest sometimes the way you would if you were independent and playing the long game. And one of the challenges of a lot of the independent companies is they don't have enough revenue to be able to make those investments into the team. And so, we brought a lot of our innovation from our backgrounds in technology to cut costs that we saw as kind of fat in the system. For example, we are fully remote. When you hire us, you're not paying for us to have a big office space that ultimately does not matter for your end result as a client, because we've hired folks who love working remote. You know, we were born during the pandemic, so we were remote from day one. That's a huge competitive advantage because our processes are much leaner. You cut costs there, that goes into cost savings for your clients, which again, that allows for more profit as well and to reinvest in your company. We've built our own software for time tracking as another example to make it easier and more fun. We call it Fun Times. And so, those are just some of the examples I can give, but there's many others that allows us to be just much more efficient. And those, at the end of the day, we're doing all of these things because there's always fun to be had. And we want to get to that fun for our clients, for our team, in everything we do. And so, if I may, going a little bit further here, one thing I always liked about a quote that always stuck with me was Jeff Bezos. He said, your margin is my opportunity. He was talking about the retailers that had, fat margins. And he kind of played a different game because he was e-commerce, and it allowed him to do that. And he could scale, and he could, play the long game in the public markets that they couldn't play because he had scalability, and then build all those other services around it. And obviously worked out really well for him. In our case, our philosophy is your culture, meaning most of the creative agencies out there, obviously not all, there are some that have incredible culture. Your culture is our opportunity. So if we build the best culture possible, we will attract the best creative talent. We will have those creative talent do their best work and be happy and, work really well with our clients. Our clients are going to have the best work, and they're going to have great results and have fun working with us. And they're going to, spend more with us and tell their friends and so forth. And it kind of grows, the work gets more work. And ultimately, that's our kind of view of the marketplace of how we can win. And it's really worked well. In less than 3 years, we've grown to 60 plus employees, and we've had, tremendous clients, and really have done it in a way where the culture is the culture we wanted to build. And it's our North Star is to make every day a fun day. And, that's for our partners, that's for our clients, that's for our, employees. Of course, it's a North Star. You don't always deliver on that. There's some days that aren't fun. But that is the guiding principle. And, when we're off course, what's great about our name is it always is a mirror to us. And it's funny, every time we're not, as winning as other times, or things aren't where it's like, it always goes back, well, what's not fun right now? And once you figure that piece out and you kind of correct that, everything falls into place. So that was the general philosophy, was that fun and performance are, two sides of the same coin. And so if what is fun? Winning is fun. Playing your best is fun. Doing great work is fun. Hitting your numbers is fun. Working in a collaborative way is fun, right? Like all of these things boil down to that. And so that was why we called ourselves Fun Day. And I would even say one more thing around that is, to our customers, when they are with a creative agency, the most fun part of their day should be with a creative agency. It shouldn't be when they're talking with, legal and, other board issues, or, a bunch of different, HR issues that's going on there in their world. It should be the most fun part of their day, because you get to play, you get to create storytelling. You're making things, you're seeing your brand come to life, you're seeing your, it should be playful. And so that was kind of the reason why we call ourselves Fun Day. And it's at the heart of this business, which is really around that concept and infusing it that first at the cultural level, so at the employment level, and then it's going to trickle its way all, and touch everything, including our clients and partners and so forth.
But could you talk about, what are some things that you do to instill culture in a remote environment? What are some of the things that you do as a company to have a good culture, even though you're not in the office?
Yeah, it's the one thing that plays in our favor is that day one we were remote. So we didn't go from being in the office to remote, which I think that causes certain other challenges. So it put everyone on the same level playing field. There's no differentiation within the team, and we are remote all over Canada, US, Europe. So our team is spread out. And one of the key things is it comes down to communication, number one. So the way I view culture is, people, process, and performance, right? That makes up a big part. And then, of course, purpose. And so on the people side, it's very important that your communication is awesome. And that's, you're primarily communicating for the most part through, in our case, Slack. So the written communication has to be respectful. And then, of course, when you are in video calls and so forth, the same thing. That's at the fundamental, respect, communication, that starts everything. And then hiring people that embody that. So, the no asshole rule, if you will. So that's at the foundation level, because at the end of the day, it's all people that are going to do things, right? Like that's all what a company is, right? It's a group of people. Then the people will determine the processes. So then you got to be very mindful of the processes that you build, because that's how you get the work done. So everything from, the tools that you use to how complicated things are from a structural perspective, you want to reduce that to simplicity. How we organize what we call pods. So how we service our clients, we design pods so they work very closely together, and that kind of creates a good working relationship that they can, service, one or two clients within that pod, and really always looking at improving the processes and then injecting fun in those processes as well. So, we have characters that have been designed, that have been created within, our our culture, where won't go into too many details, but it's a kind of fun TikTok type character that just lives internally, that shows up at different times. And we play games on Slack channel that with emojis and guess the movie trivia with emojis, just like playful, silly stuff. We have weekly meetings where we have what we call truth and lies, which is when a new member of the team gets onboarded, they get to kind of talk a little bit about themselves, but through a storytelling mechanism that we call truth and lies. And you kind of try to guess what's truthful and what's a lie. And so all these little things all add up, right? So you have multiple different things, but you also have to be, performing as well, right? At the end of the day, you have to grow. So it's people, process, performance. And the process, it's a combination of things that are to get the business done for performance. And then there's other elements that's to inject fun and to inject personality and to inject, that the spirit, if you will, and to embody the Funday ethos. And then we do, our holiday parties and other things where we meet in person. And not, that's kind of big picture.
Yeah, I love that.
Details, but
Phil, I know we only have a few more minutes, but I do want to highlight a little bit more about what you do. And we're talking about storytelling, and this is what you help companies do. Right. And so if you're looking at this, it's funday.agency/work. You could see 7-Eleven, you can see Perfy, you can see Cerebelli. I don't know if my favorite, I love the Cerebelli one, but Go Toll or Cerebelli? I don't know which one would be better to talk about. And what you
Yeah,
did.
so I mean, they're both fun. GoToll, we just recently won a Clio award for it. It's we actually haven't updated to the Clio award on the website yet. So as like anything else, you always have things that you need to update. So this was kind of the older campaign that you're seeing here, but it was basically it's a toll troll that we invented. Lou the toll troll, and it's a fun character, very Pixar kind of style, if you will, and it's essentially him, stopping you and explaining why you're kind of an idiot. You didn't download GoToll. You could have skipped the toll, which is basically skipping the toll troll, and it's a fun campaign. It's little 15-second videos for different kind of use cases, showing the reasons to believe into the product. And so a perfect kind of way to embody, again, the story around why use GoToll, which is, so you don't have to use the transponders or go through the toll. And so it's like a mobile app that just does it seamlessly, if you will. So kind of like how Uber does it for taxis, but here it's for tolls. And it really tells in a fun way. You turn something that, is a very, it's a utility app, if you will, but you turn it into a story, and you turn it into infusing storytelling elements so that the ads are punchy, and they just delivered like incredible results just in terms of the metrics that marketers care about, like CAC and so forth. So because the better the ads, the cheaper your cost of acquisition becomes. And as we know, the social networks also reward you if your creatives are good by lowering your CPM as well. So there's a lot of reasons to do great creative. It's not just to win awards. It's not just to do pretty things. It's not just for fun too. It's actually, it will drive performance. And so that was one of the campaigns that was really fun. And you
mentioned
showing me that we have to update the website.
You mentioned though billboards helped with this.
Yeah. So we also I guess we were talking about this earlier before we started recording. Like all things, I think this is why you want a strategic marketing company on your side, not just someone who's doing pure bottom of the funnel performance or affiliate marketing or some of these different niches. Those are fine. You have a place for that in some cases. But the reason why you want a strategic partner is every product, every service has different things that will work for them to acquire customers in different ways. And you have to put on your thinking hat. You have to start looking and sometimes test. And so in this case, for example, GoToll, billboards, when people are driving and seeing, even though they won't download the app right there, it's getting them to make the brand association and then realize the frustration of they got to stop and pay this toll and all the rest, where they could have just skipped by using GoToll. So it brought in the right type of top of the funnel brand awareness. Then we follow up with those stories that we just talked about to go into the mid funnel and bottom of the funnel. So your full funnel is kind of touched on, and then you're acquiring the customer much, at a lower CAC. And so you really have to think of the customer journey and where is the best places for the customer to learn about you. And it's not, most people just think it's social media, and yes, that is one part of the marketing mix, but depending on what you're selling, there could be some gems that you should be testing. And every company has these unique places. In some cases it's influencer marketing, in some cases affiliate, in some cases it's, sponsoring a specific type of event because you're B2B. So there's all types of different ways of solving the problem.
Yeah. I wanted to ask one last question. I don't know if you have a few more minutes. I just want to hear some of your favorite books. But if you have to run, we can stop, Phil. But do you have to go? Or do
No,
you
I
have
can take a few
okay,
more
cool.
minutes. Yeah.
And I just want to show people, this is my favorite on the site, Sarah Belli. I don't know why it's my favorite. I just love the way you walk through the journey here of art and science, and then the neurosurgeon mom of three. And so I encourage people to check this out and other work you have on your page. But my last question is just some resources, some of your favorite resources. You mentioned The Power of Story. What are some of your favorite books or resources that you recommend other people check out?
The things I like to read are not necessarily always on marketing. It's on psychology, but I think this is touching more on the founder side of things, which is the mental game that you need to kind of get really good at if you want to build resiliency and build the belief that you need in order to, build something from nothing and to carry on. And so one of the things, I grew up playing tennis, competitive tennis, and one of my favorite books that probably had one of the biggest impacts, not just on my tennis game, but in life in general, because it's really a spiritual book, if you will, and a psychological book all wrapped into one. It's called The Inner Game of Tennis. And there's a whole series of them. It started with tennis, then there was Inner Game of Ski, Inner Game of Music, Inner Game of Work, and it kind of became but at the core, it was about quieting the ego mind, if you will, the self-critical mind, to let your natural self play the sport. And the very interesting is, like, there's two selves in you, right? And that's why you're talking to yourself. Well, who's talking to who? And kind of that was the general premise. Very much influenced by the Eastern philosophy of approach, but very fascinating way through the game of tennis to explain how to become more essentially intuitive and being less by not getting yourself in the way, essentially, by not having your ego get in the way, or your self-critical element, right, get in the way. And so there's some great tactics on it. There's great storytelling in it as well. And obviously it's more fun if you play tennis, because a lot of the analogies and the stories are on tennis. But there are, like I said, a series, so you can always use, if you're into skiing, you can read The Inner Game of Skiing and so forth. But I know that book's had tremendous impact on many, many people in the business world. I know Bill Gates is one of his favorite books as well. I urge everyone to check out one of The Inner Game of. Tennis is my favorite out of the ones that I've read.
Cool. I love it. Everyone check it out. Check out more episodes of the podcast. Check out funday.agency. And Phil, I'm going to be the first one to thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, your journey, and the lessons. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.